Hi, I'm Harvey, host of Franchising Brand Stories.
And I'm Ed. I'm the MD of the Alternative Board, or TAB.
And welcome to Franchising Brand Stories, Season 5, brought to you by Franrex, specialist staff and executive recruiters to the UK franchise industry. And this is the show, I'm going to do it, where we get under the hat of some of the top brands in the UK and in the world. And this is a live show. Well, it's live if it's February 27th at about 5:15 for around 50 minutes. And this show is for you if you are somebody who is looking at investing in a franchise business. We get to hear what's beyond those brochures, and we get to meet the wonderful people that are behind these fantastic brands. We get to understand what they're all about. So if you are here live today, please pop a comment in and we can have a go at answering that live. Don't put the pressure on us too much, though. And the brand story we're going to hear today is TAB with the lovely Ed Reid. Ed, welcome to Franchising Brand Stories.
Thank you, Harvey. Really very nice to be here. I'm a tiny bit trepidatious, but you've promised to be kind, so let's see.
Oh, absolutely. And trepidatious. What a word to start with. Wow.
Yeah, it won't get it's downhill from here.
Good stuff. Excellent. Well, look, we're going to start where we always start, which is to find out what TAB is. A lot of people will know, some people won't know. But if you are watching this as a potential investor and you're thinking, which brand do I align with? What are they all about? This is what we want to know. So, what is TAB? Let us know.
Sure. Well, I'll start with why we exist, and that is to make the lives of business owners better. We fundamentally believe that the business owners in the UK are the engine of the economy. They're the heroes. They're the people who take the risks, who employ people, who generate revenue, income, GDP, all that kind of stuff. And the irony is that a lot of people from the outside look at them and think they're fairly indestructible and they must have amazing lives and everything's always going swimmingly for them. But actually, the bigger their businesses get, typically the lonelier they get, and the bigger the decisions get that they have to take, and therefore the pressure mounts, and it can be a really, really lonely place to exist. So we are here to ensure that they aren't lonely, that they've got people who they can turn to for real world advice, and that they can be really open and honest and kind of genuine with, which is tricky, actually, trying to find people who you trust enough to be 100% honest. So the way we do that primarily is through putting them around tables with other business owners who are like them, running non-competing businesses, and all of them every month in that same group get to bring issues or opportunities they've got going on in their businesses and get advice from their fellow business owners. So it's real world advice. It's aimed at them specifically as individuals. It's not kind of generic advice that you could get in a book or even on AI, to be a
Yeah,
bit topical.
very
So
good.
yeah, so that's who we are, and that's who we serve, and we love doing it.
Fantastic. A great description. And I mean, I write down a lot more at the during these things than I have written down at the beginning of these things because I love listening and I love learning from people in
Yeah.
our wonderful industry. I love what you said there about the engine of the economy. And
Mm.
I think you're absolutely right. I also think you're right about the fact that running a business can be really lonely.
Mm.
Um, and it's why I love franchising, because franchising, in essence, can take some of that loneliness away
Yeah.
because you've got these big networks. Let us know kind of where you're at today in terms of number of franchisees and whereabouts you have sort of territories or where you have people operating in the UK or in the world.
Sure. So we've got 35 franchisees. There are about another 10 people who work with some of those franchisees, kind of delivering the same kind of services. We're all over the UK in terms of our kind of stretch. So we go from Aberdeen down to Exeter. Got lots of people in the southeast, as you'd probably expect. Partly because we were established in Yorkshire, we've got a strong presence there. But actually, the exciting thing for me as the franchisor is that we've still got loads to go at. So I think we could easily be 2 or 3 times the size that we are currently. So but the really the hardest thing by miles is trying to find the right people for us. People who A, we want to work with, and B, we think are good enough to make a success of it. And unfortunately, that's not as easy as I wish it was.
No, definitely not. And we're going to get to that because actually it's really interesting to know who is right for a
Mm,
business.
yeah,
Really important. Look, before we get on to that, let's recognise the fact that we've got a few people here live with us today. So let's say hello. We've got the lovely Nick Plevin here. He's put hello everyone. Glad to be here this evening. Well, it's always good to have you with us. We've also got Simon Wise with us, the ever wise Simon Wise. He has a lot to live up to. He's put hello, franchise friends. And he's also put, and I like this, real world advice. Love that. Yeah, me too. And I also like the fact that you wanted to make people's lives better. It's a
yeah.
great way, it's a great philosophy, it's a great direction, at least, to want to go.
Mm.
If you have just joined us today, this is Franchising Brand Stories. Today we are hearing the story behind TAB, the alternative board, with the lovely Ed Reid. And Franchising Brand Stories is brought to you by FranRec, specialist staff and executive recruiters to the UK franchise industry. We are about to get into this story, get into the real bones of the story, find out what happened in the past. But before we do that, because I love to say hello to people that are here live, we've got the lovely Ian Bradley here with us. Ian's put good evening, everyone. Well, good evening to you as well. And we've got Katrina Newman with us. We've got a lot of QFPs. You're attracting, the top franchising experts, that's for sure. Glad
That's
to be.
two of my favourite people. It's certainly two of my favourite QFPs. I mean, that's very, very nice to have some along as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, look, let's get into it because it's now the time where we take you back in time. I used to get the little Back to the Future car out at this point, but I was worried about copyright things, so
Yeah,
can't do that
yeah.
anymore. Things have to change. But let's get into that right now. So, where did it all begin for you at Tab? And take us right back in time now to the dawn of Tab or the
Well,
career.
yeah. So this is going back 15 years now, which saying that feels completely mad, Harvey, to be honest. That I've been involved with Tab in wearing a couple of different hats, but for 15 years, which is about 5 times longer than I managed to stay in any other organization through my career before that. So I'd spent the kind of bulk of my initial career in large corporate in FMCG, so fast moving consumer goods. Had a lot of fun working for companies like Diageo, who world's biggest drinks company, which was good.
I'm aware of it.
And yes, you'll certainly be aware of a lot of their brands. I still am. I've maintained that passion for sure. And then I went from there to Nestle, to their confectionery division. Ran a fairly big sales team for them, which was also good fun. Keep in touch with loads of those guys and girls still. And I then sort of got the bug to go and work for a smaller business. I felt like I'm sure this was an ego thing, and a psychologist could have a field day with this. But I think I basically decided I wanted to be a bigger fish in a smaller pond,
Mhm.
um, and yeah, went and worked for this brilliant company up in the northeast who were printers, and they printed all of the stuff that they supplied to the kind of businesses that I used to work for, so the big brand owners and the big retailers. And Loved that, but then 2008 hit, which you'll remember was kind of fairly
Mhm.
tough economic times, and it certainly was tough economic times for a business that was selling into retail when the world was kind of collapsing around us. So I, I guess this is the kind of either you're glass half full or glass half empty. I was made redundant and saw it as an amazing opportunity to change tack and look for something else. And initially, I thought I'll just go and get another job, um, and nearly took one, and then thought, oh, maybe it's just going to be just the same, and I've got potential opportunities to do something a bit different, and was introduced to Tab by a kind of headhunter, great guy who I'm also still in touch with now. And uh, yeah, I'd never considered franchising, didn't really understand it. Certainly hadn't heard of Tab. They'd sort of just launched in the UK, having been in the States for kind of 20 years before that. But the UK was their first market outside of North America. So it was, pretty, I'll call it pioneering. I mean, the alternative is flying by the seat of our pants, which it felt
Like
like, and it was really exciting. And so, yeah, so I just, I chose to make that leap. I knew I didn't want to do something totally on my own. That classic franchising phrase of, work for yourself, but, not alone. And I thought, yeah, that was a nice combination for me. And really importantly, I loved the people who I met, when I went for a discovery day, sort of, 15 and a half years ago, whatever it was. And I love the concept. My old boss at the printing business had been on a peer board, not a Tab one because we didn't exist, but he loved it and raved about it. In fact, he used to tell me and the rest of the board members in that business that it was the best meeting he used to go to every month. And I thought it was sort of almost offensive, given I thought the best meeting should be the meeting I was in with him. But yeah, so that's sort of how it started, and I started at the end of 2009. Went to the States for 2 weeks of very intense training. Forgot almost everything on the plane on the way home, and launched in January in 2010.
fantastic. So you were a franchisee,
Hmm.
and I love hearing your story as to how you became a franchisee.
Hmm.
And we'll talk more about who might or who could be a franchisee and who you look
Hmm.
for.
Hmm.
But you mentioned there about being made redundant, and
Hmm.
unfortunately, it's something that does happen.
Hmm.
But alongside that, you said it was an amazing opportunity because you had the opportunity you had to make a different decision.
Hmm.
You
Hmm.
forced to make a different decision, and some people are in that position. It does take a bit of bravery to take perhaps the financial redundancy package and invest that into something else rather than keeping it in a pot and
Hmm.
sort of using it while you're looking for a job, which is the other alternative. But
Yeah.
I love that you had that attitude at that time, and it was brave to do that. But what then took you? What was your journey then from franchisee into being a franchisor?
Yeah. Well, certainly at the start, I didn't expect anything like it. And I just did the kind of classic work hard, follow the bouncing ball, the kind of procedures and processes that, were being suggested to me that, might work. And I thought, well, I've invested in it. So why wouldn't I follow the kind of guidance that was coming
I
from
like
the,
follow the
from the
bouncing
franchisor?
ball.
But yeah, it's kind of one of the phrases that we use with our prospective franchisees even now, actually. So yeah, so I got my head down. I mean, it had to. My wife was unbelievably supportive of me when I'd taken the decision to invest in the franchise. Um, and she was working. We had two. The boys they're now 22 and 19. They were 5 and 2 or something at the time. So it was, the pressure was on, and not helped by the fact that my wife then said, well, I definitely want you to do this, but it does have to work. Like, well, okay. So yeah, I just, I worked really hard. I got to know my territory, which was York, which is, as it turned out, I thought, it was close to home, but an absolutely fantastic territory to work in, got to know the local business community, and you gradually started to build my business. And year one, year two was tough. It always is. The emotional roller coaster of anyone setting up their own business in the first couple of years. The highs are unbelievable, and the lows are also unbelievable.
Mhm.
And you've got to be pretty resilient. And I was really lucky that the other new Tab franchisees, we'd all started well, a few of us had started at the same time, and we were incredibly supportive of each other. The head office team, which was smaller than it is now, but were also amazing. The franchisors and the support team. So it felt like we were all in it together, and I was just really keen to sort of play my part and make a success of it. So did that. Gradually grew the business. Brought a couple of people into that business alongside me. One worked out, one didn't, which is a bit of a kind of learning curve for all of us. And then about 6 years into that, I was loving it. Amazing work-life balance, good income. All of my friends, I think, who initially had thought I was mad to invest in a franchise, were looking at me going, "Yeah, it looks like you've made the right decision here, Ed." And I felt like I had. And then, yeah, 6 years in, I was approached by the then franchisors, and they said, "Our plan is to exit, and we'd like you to be the person who buys it." And that was, I can remember the chair I was sat in the pub we were in, having that conversation, thinking, "Wow, that is that's something to think about."
So
Um,
it's what we call a Remington moment.
yeah, well, and
You
I
have to be
sort
of a
of didn't
certain
really
age to
know what
understand that one.
exactly. I didn't really sort of know what that was at the time, and obviously come to realize that it was, sort of loved it so much I decided to buy the business kind of
Really
thing.
cool.
And
Was it Victor Mayan? I can't remember his name now, but
yeah, I think it was Victor
Victor
Kayan, was it?
Kayan.
Yeah,
Kayan,
yeah,
that's it, yeah.
yes, yeah.
Excellent. Fantastic.
Yeah. So that's the sort of the story in terms of how it happened. I mean, there was a lot of work to do then in terms of getting that transaction over the line, and off to the bank and raising more money, and it was just a different quantum from when I'd started as a franchisee.
Absolutely. Let's have a look at a couple of comments here that have come in from Simon. Simon's put, I think it's fantastic that you were a franchisee before taking on the role of franchisor.
Mm,
That's very powerful for any new franchisees coming in. I absolutely agree with this. Empathy and
mm,
aligning with people that are coming in. There's no better place to do that than if you've done it yourself.
mhm.
And for a considerable period of time. So I think it's really powerful. Let's have another look at this one before we move on to another point. Great validation that a franchisee believes in the business so much they bought the whole business. Absolutely, the Remington moment. I thought it was lovely as well, and we're going to get on to this a little bit later. But the fact that your wife was supportive, because when
Mm.
we start to talk about that process, everybody's got to kind of be on board. When a
Yeah.
franchisee is coming in, it's a big decision. You've
Mm,
got to get those different perspectives, whether it's family, whether it's your spouse, whether it's business associates or friends.
mm,
Get those other perspectives because it's an important decision to make, and it it's you've got to be supported along the way. You said year one, year two were tough,
mhm.
they are tough because it's still
Yep.
running a business. You get the
Mm.
tools, but if you're a carpenter, you get a box of tools. But that's not to say it's not hard work to hammer nails in or saw wood.
Yeah. Yeah.
So pretty important stuff. Let's have a look. We've alluded to the type of people that choose your business, or the type of people maybe that you want or that are right for it. But typically, let's start here. What type of people typically do choose your business? Is it people from the sort of coaching world, people from the business community, or is it quite a widespread?
It's normally from one of those two kind of groups, I'd say. So yeah, people who have done some sort of coaching or consulting themselves, even if they've done coaching within a kind of corporate framework, where they've been senior, senior managers who, actually really recognize the value to be had from coaching, their teams to, sort of better performance and stuff. So yeah, there's a lot of us have come from, a corporate background, and very often have got to a crossroads of some sort in their career where they might be tired of the politics, they might be, just ready to do something new. So some are definitely escaping something, and some are, much more kind of, forward focused on the, moving towards, something new. Um, they've nearly always been, pretty senior because they've got to have kind of empathy and gravitas with, the business owners who they're going to be serving. And if you're walking into a, I don't know, widget manufacturing business with 100 people in it, turning over 10 million quid, you've got to have something about you for that business owner to look at you and go, well, do I think you can help me? So that you've got to have some kind of hard won experience yourself. So, with the best will in the world, we're not going to be recruiting 25-year-old franchisees anytime soon because they're just not going to have the experience to be able to do it. Having said that, we are slowly bringing the average age of our franchisees down a little bit from where, for where we, broadly first started, because it was a natural thing to kind of, attract people who were looking for almost the sort of second stage of their career, if you like.
That's really interesting because, again, if you're a prospective franchisee looking at this, okay, and you're looking, is this going to be right for me? And you're a young, enthusiastic person, it might not
Hmm.
be right for you. And it's okay to say
Hmm.
it's not right for you
Hmm.
because you need that experience of having, existed within this, or having coached people, having made lots of mistakes in your life, that you can help
Hmm.
other people not make them.
Yeah.
I mean, what's the sort of typical age or demographic then? Is it sort of 50s or 60s? Is that sort of
It's
age?
it's typically sort of 50s, but I mean, we definitely bring in people from their early 40s, quite comfortably if they've been there and got the t-shirt and kind of, done well in their career. They've kind of, they've done the hard yards, and they'll be absolutely fine. There's the real upside is they bring, almost by definition, bring a massive amount of energy to it. And one of the questions one of the things we talk about with people in the early stages is, are you going to work hard? And everyone's got a really different definition of what hard work is. So, because the standard answer to that is obviously yes. Like, well, okay, well, what does that mean to you? Tell me about a time when you have worked really hard, and how did you find it? And we need to have, like, really, like, ruthlessly honest conversations with people at that stage for us to suss out whether we think they're going to work hard enough in year one or year two to, to really get that kind of flywheel turning.
I really like that, and I really like that as a question. Genuinely, I write down questions here that I keep, and I think that's a really good one. You know,
Mm,
are you going to work hard, or what does hard work look like or feel like to you?
mm,
Because
mm.
that's different to different people.
Yeah.
People might think that hard work is that they do something very physical for a long period of time and
Mm,
they're physically tired,
mm,
or they're very creative. It's a great question because it feels obvious, but it's not obvious because the description of
mm.
hard work is different to different people.
Yeah.
You alluded there a little bit to the type of character, maybe. I mean, you used the word energy, which
Hmm.
I liked as a word, because no matter how old you are, you can have energy in an enthusiasm in what you do.
Mm.
Whether probably 20-year-olds have that in droves, but you can certainly still have it when you're in your 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and beyond.
Absolutely.
That
Yeah. Yeah.
energy, okay,
Yeah.
to go with that experience. What other characteristics do you think suit a good franchisee in your business? It's sometimes hard as an individual to work out whether you've got those, but I think it's
Mm.
important in these conversations, if you're a prospective franchisees watching this, to sort of think, well, is that me?
Yeah.
So could you sort of summarize any characters you look for?
Yeah, and I think you'd probably put it under the umbrella of, do they have a business owner mindset? And that for me is someone who is going to take the rough with the smooth, that classic growth mindset stuff, not fixed mindset. Um, that they will take responsibility for stuff. That, it's not, if something goes wrong, they're not always looking, straight at us as the franchisor and saying, well, this has gone wrong. What are you going to do about it? It's like, well, what are we going to do about it? Actually, is what I want to hear from, from people, and that applies to, brand new franchisees, and it applies, just as equally to people who've been in it for, 10, 15 years. And we're lucky that, amongst our franchisee population, there is an unbelievable amount of that business owner mentality that they take responsibility for the success or not of their own business, and do everything that they need to do. And I think the other element for us is there's not much point in investing in a franchise if you're not going to be kind of respectful of the kind of processes and collaborative, and that means that, we only ever really make, significant improvements in our business model on the back of feedback from franchisees. And that's exactly how it should be. So we try and, kind of keep those channels of communication as, open as possible, so that we, if a franchisee does have a kind of initially, a good idea, or the makings of a good idea, then, I'd like to think that they'd come and talk to us, early, and we can work on it together. And, out of that, we've developed new products and services over the last 15 years.
I love that. I love that you're taking that direction from your franchisees, and that the significant improvements in the company have come as a result of your network. That's a really, really important thing. And I don't think that's a thing that we hear enough. And I think it's really interesting. The other thing that I picked up on there that I think is really fascinating is that you look for somebody with a business owner mindset. Now,
Mm-hmm.
I think this is a really interesting point, because it would be really interesting to know what people's view of a business owner mindset is, right? Because in franchising, we have this really interesting model to traditional entrepreneurship. And I hate saying that word. I can't spell it and I can't say it.
Yeah, I'm with you. Yeah.
Um, but often, if you've got a business owner mindset, does that suit a franchisee mindset? And it was also interesting that you said that, of course, along with that, you've got to be able to respect and understand the value of the proven model.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You're buying into something that's got a proven model, so that you get a better chance of success.
Yeah.
You've got to have a business owner mindset, and sometimes that owner mindset is, I'll do what I want, how I want,
Mm-hmm.
when I want.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
what's been really interesting to me is the questions that you ask franchisees and what their answers might be. A description of a business owner mindset would be a really interesting one.
Yeah.
Yeah, love it. Love that.
Yeah,
Um,
and it is a balance, that, Harvey. It's why, I think, I'm sure all the, really good franchise networks, through their, recruitment of great new franchisees, you're trying to strike that balance of people who, bring something to the table, but equally respect that you've got to where you've got to, because actually everyone has been, kind of following the protocols, and, and building on them. But it is a balance. I wouldn't want someone who's extreme one way or extreme the other. But it's people who kind of respect, both elements. And I think if you can get that mix right, then, it's potentially perfect for, for the franchising world that we're in.
Absolutely. It's like baking. You've got to get the
Yeah.
mix right. I made a cake only the other day, and I'm not sure if I got the mix right on that. Very decadent, according to my wife.
Nice.
One of the things that I want to move on, we've talked a little bit there about the type of people that you're looking for in your organization. And I think when you're a potential franchisee, it's good to understand what the process looks like But before you do that, if you have just joined us today, this is Fan Stories. And today we're getting under the hat of Tab with the lovely Ed Reid. And Franchising Brand Stories is brought to you by FranRec, specialist staff and executive recruiters to the UK franchise industry. I used to have to look at that written down. I can say it now, I've remembered
Yeah,
it.
you've done very well there. You've nailed it every time.
Oh, well, thank you, Ed. But look, let's do this now. Again, I think this is so important. If you're thinking, is this the franchise for me? It's also quite good to understand type of characteristics, type of person that you're looking for, but what's going to happen when you pick up that phone or send an email or make a contact? What does that journey look like?
Yeah, I mean, this is, you find out a lot about whether people are going to be the right fit when you describe the journey to them and whether they kind of accept that that is the journey that they're going to be on, or whether they almost push back and go, well, actually, I want to do it this way. Like, well, you might want to, but that's not how it's going to be.
Mhm.
Because if you don't respect that, it sort of sends signals around you might not be respecting the other kind of processes that we've got in place. So, yeah, I mean, in essence, have we've got a specific journey in terms of how much information we share with people at different stages, because it'll be very easy to bamboozle people really early on and them not be able to see the wood for the trees. So we'll have a couple of conversations early to ensure that they really understand the model and the value that we deliver to our clients. And once we're kind of comfortable with that, we then share more information so that they've got a kind of even more holistic view of what could be possible in running one of our businesses. At the point then that I'm comfortable that they get it and they understand the kind of the basics almost, then if we think they're showing kind of all the right signs, then we'd invite them to a discovery day. So there's probably 3 interactions before discovery day. Discovery day is a full day. We'd have they get to meet all of the amazing central team that we've got in Leeds. They meet me and Mags, who's the co-owner of the business with me. So they see all of us. I think that's really important in terms of meeting the people. We're sharing more information again, but just as importantly, we're seeing them in action kind of through the day. And we typically would only have 1 to 3 people on any discovery day. We've tried it with a couple more than that and felt like it's probably unfair on all of them sat around a table, because they're not necessarily getting enough airtime and we're not getting to know them well enough either.
I agree.
We're a people business, and we need to get to know our prospective franchisees as kind of quickly as we can and as well as we can. So yeah, discovery day. Then we've got another couple of stages, which ultimately finishes with them talking to some of our existing franchisees. So I'll ask them, do you want to talk to someone who's either a certain period of time in, or in a certain geography, or running a certain size of business? Try and match them with existing franchisees for a conversation. And then we also, the kind of final bit is then get them along to one of our board meetings, where they'd go along and participate really fully in a board meeting with our run by one of our franchisees with their clients, so they experience everything before they make a decision, because I know as well as anyone it's a bloody big decision, and we
It
want
is.
them
Yeah.
making it with kind of all the facts.
I think it's really interesting to understand that journey. There are 3 touch points before the discovery day, conversations, trying to understand whether they're right before they. And at this point, it's nothing to do with money. It's nothing to do with signing anything. At this point, it's to do with whether you feel they're right, whether they
Yeah.
feel they're right. Come in to then have a conversation. Can I just ask, during all of these processes, the 3 touch points
Hmm.
before the discovery day, meeting the existing franchises, attending a board meeting, probably an alternative board meeting,
It
I would have
is,
thought,
yes.
but
Nicely done.
thank you. But during all of that process, am I right in saying that they're not committing in terms of signing a franchise agreement or paying any
Correct.
money
Yeah.
up till
Yeah,
that point?
absolutely. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
All we ask at the start is that they commit to the process and kind of give it their all, because
Okay.
we obviously do likewise, and say, we'll furnish you with as much information as we possibly can. But yeah, there's no, I mean, other than a sort of NDA that we introduced kind of probably halfway through that. Other than that, that's it. We don't want people making financial or legal commitments until the point that they're really comfortable that it's the
You're
right thing for
ready.
them and that we're really comfortable they're right for us.
Yeah, that's absolutely the right thing to do. And it's comforting to hear it. It's comforting to hear it if you're a potential
Mm.
investor that you think, oh, well, I don't want to go through this process if I'm committing to something before
Yeah.
I'm ready. And it's
Mm.
very clear that
No,
you're not going to be
absolutely
doing
not.
that. And then after that board meeting, that's the point then where some joint decisions are
Mhm.
made. If you're happy with that particular person, then a territory is offered. Is that how
Yeah,
it
it
would
is.
work? And
We're
they make,
still a kind of territory based. So yeah, we'd have obviously had the conversations with them before about where that might be, and we'd probably have done a bit of at that stage. Would have worked on the territory a little bit, and just to make sure it was going to be as right as it can be for them. So there's a bit of flex there, um, because we want people people are they're often coming out of a corporate career where they've had a lot of travel and all that kind of stuff, and we want people working as close as possible, if not within their own, the business community that they live in. It's a brilliant thing to do. You feel more connected. So, yeah, so that's it. It's a territory, and then then it's the legals, which we've made sure that they've had a look at as well before they're committing to anything. Insist that they get good legal advice from BFA accredited, lawyers. It's, we're strong on that. And, because it's a serious agreement they're signing.
oh, 100%. And that's fantastic. It's good to really understand that. Look, let's get on. It's great to understand the sort of the process leading up to becoming a
Mm,
franchisee. But let's say you've gone through that. It's right from your perspective, it's right from that potential franchisee's perspective. So it's now, I think, really good for people who are watching this and thinking, is this going to be right
mm,
for me, to understand what a day
mhm.
looks like for prospective franchisees? So let's talk about that now. What does a sort of a typical day look like? I mean, I'm sure they're varied, but what happens at the beginning and right the
Mm.
way through? Talk us through a day at
Yeah, so I'd say probably day in year one is going to be different from other days from year two onwards, roughly. To kind of keep it simple. So year one, you're spending a lot of time in a tab franchise. You're spending a lot of time meeting business owners. Um, and it's a similar kind of process to what we've just talked about in terms of the mutual element of it, because as a tab franchisee, you don't have to work with anyone. You do choose who you work with. um the reality of when you're first setting up your business is you are less choosy than you ultimately will become. The filter's not quite as tight. um but but you're spending the most of the first year building your business, and therefore meeting lots of business owners, and hopefully converting a certain proportion of them who go, yes please, Harvey, I'd love to come and join one of your one of your peer boards and have you as my coach. So that's, you're spending most of your time doing that in year one, to be honest. And you'll be starting to deliver the services from kind of typically from sort of month 4 onwards, something like that, where you'll have got your first board up and running. You'll be then doing a bit of a blend of business development and kind of service delivery, if you like. And then, really by the time you're into year two, you should be, you're through your initial launch, and then you start to make decisions about how big you want your business to be, and whether you want to do it just on your own, whether you want to bring people in. And we run our own internal peer boards of all of our franchisees. So those are the kind of things that they typically bring along to those kind of meetings. It's like, I've got this far. It's like I've now got some choices in terms of how big and how bold do I want to be. Um, so they get their fellow franchisees to help them with those decisions, which is great. So we practice what we preach. Um, and then so a typical month then, if you're running a tab franchise that you've got off the ground, is you might be running 3 half day board meetings in the month with your three different groups. If you've got three groups, you've got roughly 20 people you're working with, so you're going to be doing 20 coaching sessions in a month. We still do the vast majority of those in person. Just our clients, so we call them members, they love that in-person element rather than doing it on Zoom, for example. And then we've got strategic kind of programs that we offer as well. So you might be running a couple of kind of strategy delivery programs with the clients that you've got, but just more in depth and working with their teams rather than just the owner.
No, I love it. I mean, we're going to move on to a question actually that Simon's put up in a minute. But one thing that I wanted to ask you, I mean, you mentioned there quite a lot about business
Hmm.
development, actually. It seems a lot of during those
Mm.
early years, you're trying to get those businesses involved that could benefit from
Yeah.
the help. As a franchisor, do you assist with that process of bringing in those potential leads, those potential companies that could have that
Yeah,
conversation?
I mean, because we've done it,
Or
we've done it for 15 years now. We know what works and what doesn't. I mean, clearly stuff changes over the years. Digital marketing's become, a bigger part of that mix than it was when I first started, when, could barely spell digital marketing, never really, never mind know what it was. But yeah, we've got kind of tried and tested methods. We outsource, some of that initial BD stuff, in terms of the, to getting meetings booked. So we outsource that to some great telemarketers who we've worked with for years and years and years. We do similar stuff on LinkedIn. So yeah, I mean, it's a real collective effort in year one, which we
yeah,
commit to as the franchisor to make sure that they've got the best possible chance. Yeah. I mean, if we weren't going to do that, otherwise they might as well go and do it on their own. But
well,
so
absolutely.
yeah, we make
Let's have a
we
look at
make
this.
commitments to ensure that they're going to have the
Great.
right amount of meetings. Yeah.
Perfect. Let's have a quick look at this one before we move on to one of my favourite bits of this show. But Simon's put, Ed, I'm interested in understanding how the business model works. Your franchisees'
Mhm.
revenue, is it derived from annual membership subscriptions from their business clients, or opportunities for add-on sales too? Great question, Simon. Actually, yeah. Let's understand how people pay your franchisees for this service. How
Yeah,
does that
so
work?
the members, so they're the business owner clients, the guys where started off going, these are the people who we serve and hope to change their lives for the better. So they pay us a monthly subscription fee, which
Okay.
will vary sort of slightly dependent on the size and complexity of the business. Um, but yeah, so if you've got roughly, if you're working with 20 businesses spread across three boards, then you've got 20 kind of lots of monthly fees coming in each month. And then on top of that, if we then start working kind of more deeply with any of them beyond the board meetings and the coaching session, then yeah, we charge extra for that kind of time and expertise. And that might be at any one time, that might be with, I don't know, three or four of the 20 where you're doing something more substantial with the owner and their team.
Fantastic. I mean, it's interesting to understand exactly how that
Mm.
model works. So no, great. Thanks for answering that. Well, look, we've come to one of my favorite bits actually. Okay, because we've heard a really interesting story of actually how this business changed your
Mhm.
life. And you're in franchising has this wonderful thing where it can change the lives of a franchisor, in your case, from a franchisee, but it can change the lives of
Mm.
franchisees that come into the business, and it can change the lives of the people in those boards that are benefiting from
Yeah.
the service. Then it can change the lives of all the people in their
Yeah.
businesses. So I imagine that you have got lots of stories and you've met lots of characters. But is there a character or a story that sticks out in your mind over the years where someone's really genuinely had their life changed by franchising and by being involved in this?
Um, I mean, there's when you're saying that, there's lots of people who are kind of going on the on the
Sure.
on the film
Sure.
reel almost. But yeah, I mean, there's so I'll give an example of a guy who I started. So this is a franchisee story, a tab franchisee story. So a guy who I started within a month of starting at the same time as him, um, and he'd come out, he'd sort of escaped corporate. probably been quite, run down by it. Had a, kind of, serious health scare as well. And, was looking for the kind of next chapter of his life. And, went all guns blazing as I did at setting his tab franchise up. And, so 15 years later, he's still going. I reckon he's got more energy now than he had back then. He's in his, he's in his 60s now. He's like he's like the Duracell bunny, in terms of his levels of energy and enthusiasm. And he's just, the other franchisees, across the country and, well, in fact, across the world in Tab, kind of know him because he's infectious. He brings the value he's delivered to his customers is absolutely astounding. And I couldn't stop him even if I wanted to. And I absolutely love that. And his life now, he's absolutely nailed it. He works hard when he's working. He has amazing amounts of time off to, go on holiday with his wife. He's put his kids through uni and into houses. His dilemmas about, how expensive his next set of speakers are for his fancy, hi-fi system at home. And it just makes me really happy to kind of see the journey that
Yeah.
he's been on and continues on. And, he's the sort of, he's a kind of flag waver for, for not just for Tab, but for franchising.
I love it. Love it. If you have just joined us today, this is Franchising Brand Stories. Today we have heard the fantastic story of Tab with the lovely Ed Reid. If you scan the QR code top left, if you are catching us this late, you can have a look at the entire episode. And if you're catching a snippet in the distant future, you can also do the same. So we are going to get on to the last sort of chapter of today's episode. And this is when we get the Franchising Brand Stories exclusive. Ed, it's time for that. And we're gonna talk a bit about the future. So let us know what exciting things you've got planned for the future for Tab, and how things are going to change and develop.
Yeah, so I think the big change that we're kind of going through at the moment actually is that we've traditionally worked pretty much exclusively with the business owner. And, over the years, it's kind of dawned on us because we've been asked again and again and again about it. It's like, actually, you can help. Could you work a little bit more directly with, my senior leadership team and kind of not just me, so that they can actually, take on a bit more responsibility and accountability for delivering stuff, make the business less reliant on that individual at the top. So we've got 2 or 3 things that we're introducing now, kind of new products and services, which we're all really excited about, and are getting is getting brilliant reception in the market. So that's great. So there'll be more of that to come. I mean, internationally, we'll continue to expand into other markets, which is really nice to, it's great to see, they then become, peers of, mine and Mag's, with people running Tab businesses in all sorts of different countries. So that's, we're in Vienna next month for 3 days with our international peers, and we'll be talking about, the kind of strategy for the, for the global organization, and we're a big part of that. So, that's nice. It's, it's kind of feels like it's, certainly for me personally, it's come a long way from, me being worried about setting up a few boards in York, and then, I'm in discussions with, some of my Tab mates about how they're launching the business in Chile. It's like, which is brilliant. So it's, that's nice, and there'll be a lot more of that into the future.
That's fantastic. It's great to understand again, if you're a potential business owner here, looking at getting involved here, as to what exciting things are happening in the future. Finally, I'd like to ask if you've got any final thoughts to share. And while you're doing that, if now people scan the QR code top left, it's going to take you to your fantastic website, and you can find out all about the franchise there. So please do that now. And let us know if you've got any final thoughts, Ed.
Yeah, I mean, I think just on franchising in general, I think, if you're considering investing in a franchise, do some really, really good due deal. Be respectful, because the franchisor is doing due deal on you, and how you handle yourself through that whole process is certainly for us is a really big part of it. I've rejected people because of the way they've handled themselves, isn't it? They had that, they were going to tick the box on paper, but actually operate, kind of working with them, just thought actually you're probably not right for us. So, but yeah, get stuck in, you know, ask good questions and be open minded. But for the right person, I think franchising is an unbelievable opportunity. So many different business formats out there that if you can't find the right one for you, then maybe franchising isn't for you.
Oh, no, completely. And I'm going to share this actually because I came up with this and I want to know what you think about that. If you've got the energy, the enthusiasm, and the experience, keep a tab
Oh,
on it.
that's nice.
How about
You could have rewritten our franchise website there.
There you go. Well, look, I want to thank everybody who has been here today live. I want to thank everybody who's going to look at this in the future. There was a question that had come up. If you are looking at this in the future, or if you catch a snippet of this, put a question still up in the comments on YouTube, the comments on LinkedIn, because Ed can go back
Mhm.
and look at it. We can go back and look at it, and we can answer that. So please put a comment up, and we will get to the one that we didn't get to today as well. And I'd like to thank you, Ed. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. Thank you for sharing what's under the hat of TAP. And let's talk about a little bit about what's happening next week on our sister show on the Franchise Show. So next Tuesday, 4th of March, we are going to be talking happy, successful franchisees, which is a nice thing to talk about. And it makes me think of Bob Ross for some reason. Happy little clouds. So join us 5:15 GMT, 12:15 EST for that. And we have come to the end of season 5 of Franchising Brand Stories. So please join us for season 6 in April, when we are going to be finding out under the hat of some amazing brands, including Molly Maid and Home Instead, and lots others to be announced. So please join us for that when we start again in April. And until next time, take very good care. Cheers.
Thanks, Harvey.
Cheers.